Hey guys, my name is Sam Whitaker, and today I'll be taking you on a virtual field trip of Fort McHenry. From 1798 through World War II, Fort McHenry served as a coastal fort, prison, hospital, and Coast Guard base. Defensive requirements meant vegetation was stripped, soils were repeatedly compacted by artillery and drills, and 19th century engineers hardened the shoreline with riprap and brick. Ammunition storage and coal-fired boilers introduced metals and hydrocarbons to soils and runoff. By the 1900s, the site supported minimal biodiversity, mostly tough grasses able to survive the trampoline and the sea salt spray, while the adjacent Patapsco River was among the most industrialized waterways in the Chesapeake. Congress designated Fort McHenry a national park in 1925 and a national monument and historical shrine in 1939. Early priorities focused on visual authenticity of the 1814 battlefield, so staff maintained open lawns and mowed ramparts but did little for ecological rehabilitation. Large-scale altercation resumed in 1976 through 1985, when the I-95 Fort McHenry Tunnel was excavated beneath the harbor. Spoil was stockpiled to create a 10-acre tidal wetland south of the fort as mitigation for habitat loss to the tunnel construction. The constructed marsh quickly degraded. Culverts stilted, tidal exchange declined, and invasive phragmites spread. In 1997, the National Aquarium and NPS launched a long-term restoration. Volunteers reopened tidal channels, removed debris, and hand-planted native Spartina alternifera and S. patens. Subsequent monitoring shows the marsh now supports resident fish such as the mummichog and white perch, seasonal striped bass, and at least 240 bird species, and periodic visits by the river otter. Besides habitat, the wetland delivers ecosystem services. It filters harbor water, captures storm runoff, and buffers wave energy against the seawall. On the star-shaped ramparts, NPS maintains a continuous vegetative cover of fescue-based turf to prevent erosion of historical earthworks. Mowing height is kept above 7 centimeters to encourage root development. Mowing frequency is reduced on peripheral berms to allow wildflower bloom and pollinator support. Visitor traffic is directed onto paved paths to limit soil compaction. Around the parade grounds, NPS and partners have planted native canopy species such as white oaks, tulip poplars, and serviceberries to expand shade, sequester carbon, and increase urban bird nesting sites while respecting historic sightlines. The early 1800s stone seawall now functions as a substitute rocky intertidal habitat. Surveys record colonization by barnacles, hooked mussels, algae, and associated invertebrates that filter suspended solids from the Patapsco. Ducks, double-crested cormorants, and belted kingfishers forage along this vertical reef, while the wall still reflects wave energy that can scour adjacent sediment. Its biological crust marginally improves local water clarity, provides foraging structure absent along most armored Baltimore shorelines. NPS leaves the biotic layer undisturbed, except when stability inspections require minor scraping. Tide gauge records show mean sea level at Fort McHenry has risen more than 1 foot since 1902. It could rise an additional 1.9 to 6.4 feet by 2100. The Coastal Hazards and Sea Level Rise Assessment of 2023 classifies ramparts, seawall, and visitor center as high exposure assets. Current adaptation measures include elevating electrical infrastructure, installing previous walkways to absorb stormwater, and expanding wetland acreage through thin layer dredge application to maintain marsh elevation relative to sea level. The visitor center was built to LEED Silver standards with geothermal exchange to lower greenhouse emissions, aligning with the NPS Climate-Friendly Parks program. Throughout the park, preference is given to native species for plantings because their biodiversity and adaptations to Maryland's climate support local wildlife better. Using less fertilizer, fewer pesticides, and conserving water, the park management is restoring some natural balance to this historic land. Fort McHenry has recycling programs in place and encourages a leave-no-trace mentality for its visitors. It's all part of protecting the Chesapeake Bay environment. Each piece of litter prevented or picked up is one less hazard for a duck or a fish. The staff here genuinely see themselves as stewards of both the history and the ecology of Fort McHenry. If you can visit in the spring, you'll notice the beautiful cherry blossoms and other flowering trees sprinkled around the park. These were planted over the years to enhance the landscape. The blossoms add not just to the scenic beauty, but also give food for the pollinators. In summer, you can find birds or even hawks perched in the trees. A far cry from the 1800s when hardly any trees would have been allowed for the line of fire. By planting and caring for native and ornamental trees, the NPS has increased shade and created perches and nesting spots for birds. Every tree here is essentially an ecosystem service provider. They cool the area, stabilize soil with its roots. Fort McHenry's green lawns and tufts of grass on top of the hills are covered in a mix of native grasses and are carefully tended for. The NPS staff works to prevent erosion on these historic earthworks. Without any healthy plant cover, the soil of the fort's walls could wash away in heavy rains. There's an interesting challenge, though. Many visitors walk up and down these grass mounds, despite warning signs. By managing where people walk, the NPS reduces soil compaction and keeps those grasses in place. Mowing is done in a strategic way, too. Today, Fort McHenry provides multiple ecosystem services to Baltimore. It provides flood mitigation via wetland storage, water quality improvement through the marsh retention and seawall biota filtration, urban heat island relief from 43 acres of vegetated cover, habitat connectivity for migratory birds, and outdoor recreation and environmental education for over 300,000 visitors annually. The shift from military installation to managed urban green space illustrates how historical landscapes can be repurposed to deliver ecological value while preserving their cultural heritage. Thank you for joining me today.